Hey everyone, my name is Rooster, and welcome back to Mechabellum. Apologies for the lack of videos in the last couple of days. I've had a bit of a creative slump, as you might say, but I'm back, and here we have Sparty and Ubon treating us to quite the game. It's going to get rather exciting, as you guys will be about to witness. And Ubon starts with a giant specialist here, picking crawlers and spiders, which is a unit that I've been somewhat avoiding myself because I'm always afraid of my opponent picking a saber pack and me having a really bad time in the early game. But if you're not facing sabers, typically it's still a very fine unit, and it does scale well. And in fact, Sparty goes for the exact same thing. So we get a bit of a rare spider mirror, which used to be quite common, but I don't think it happens that much in the current meta. And we're even going to get what looks like a headbutt with both players having the spiders almost exactly in front of one another. Now, the headbutt here is not that surprising because we do have the magnetic barricade plus a building behind on the left, and that typically just makes it very hard to push into. And oftentimes people will just choose to go onto the empty side of the board instead. On the one hand, defending their empty side of the board, but also pushing into the empty side of the opponent. Now, the only difference is that round one, both players have different types of chaff. So we have fangs in front here for Sparty, and Ubon starts with the crawlers. Sparty is a supply specialist. Pretty even matchup, I would say, right? Giant Spec can create a lot of resources if you decide to play and unlock giants. And, well, supply specialist is just a bit more flexible, but it gives you a little bit less resources overall. And both players going to go for more chaff. I think this is perfectly fine. It's probably the most common thing in high MMR to do on round one with these type of openers. Skip the DPS because round one, 100 cost DPS options are not that amazing. And you'd rather play for something like a Phoenix on round two. Chaff is going to be necessary either way, so you might as well just grab the deployments now, and then round two, round three, you're going to have more money and more deployments available to invest into better DPS units like that Phoenix I mentioned. Round number one here, Sparty does get the better end of the deal. There was nothing in front of the spiders, I believe, for Ubon, so immediately his spiders got locked onto. He does buy a fang. He probably should have built at least one fang in front of his spiders here as well, because you can kind of expect this headbutt, as I said, but it's not the end of the world. Round one, you don't take that much damage, and Ubon is still relatively healthy. Round number two, there is some cards here you could consider. Fortified Overlord, I would say, as a giant spec, is very good. It's a card that gets a bit overshadowed by something like Improved Overlord, but, you know, don't sleep on this card. Anytime that you want to play Overlords, and this shows up, I think in 95, maybe even 99% of cases, it is simply worth to click this card. The DPS reduction is just not enough for Overlord to really feel the difference, but the 75% bonus hit points can create massive issues for enemy, you know, Mustangs, low-level marksmen, even low-level Phoenixes sometimes can really struggle if you decide to pick up the levels. So yeah, do keep that card in mind. It doesn't get picked up here, and in fact, Ubon immediately goes for a round two Raiden. I'm not the biggest fan of this. I think it's fine to go for a giant here, but Raiden is not necessarily that good into spider, right? I would say Overlord is a bit better into these type of bulkier, bigger mechs, whereas Raiden is more suited into something like Sledgehammer or Steel Ball, that type of thing. It does have a good matchup into Phoenix, but I don't think it's worth grabbing a Raiden preemptively, even if you think your opponent is going to buy, you know, a singular Phoenix here. Either way, we have a bit of a spicy play from Sparty, who goes for an advanced shield device pickup and immediately buys one on round two. It's not a play you see that often, but it is something that you can go for if you're somewhat confident that your opponent is not going to have the DPS to break this shield. And it's a lot of stats, right? Almost 60,000 K HP on this shield is a lot to get through, even if you have a Raiden. And in this case, all the units are going to get in front of the shield, so Sparty gets to keep it, and it's a very solid round two. The Raiden also goes down, right? Now, I'm not sure if grabbing an Overlord would have been better. Ubon would have likely had to skip a deployment for it, but I think that's kind of fine on round two if you purchased 5 chaff on round one, right? Like, your board is kind of solid, and buying a Fortified Overlord on round two that's perfectly acceptable if that's the only thing you buy. Round number 3, unit reinforcements. Wasps usually here is something that you should consider. It's a very solid thing to get for free, and, well, it's great flank defense, but in this case, there is Mustang offered, and Ubon decides to go for it. I think even with Mustang offered here, you could still pick the Wasp because you get double deployments, and again, right, you can put them in the back where they don't immediately get engaged on, and sometimes the enemy Mustangs will die or just miss the Wasps altogether if they're on the opposite side of the field. So, yeah. But picking Mustang here is perfectly viable. Do keep in mind that if you decide to keep them, often you will have to tech into them and give them range, because otherwise they're just going to get in front of your other units and get caught up in the fire. And at level 2, they do give away a fair bit of experience. Big play here on round number 3 from Ubon, who decides to immediately sell the Raiden and go for double Fortress with the immediate anti-air tech as well. Now, the Fortress play I like. I think this is a great thing to do. It's a unit that does very well into spider boards, so I don't mind that. However, I don't think you should click AA here immediately. Even if you expect your opponent to buy a second Phoenix, it's just not worth going for the immediate AA. Make all of your other techs more expensive when you kind of don't mind having, you know, battle techs down the line here against these spiders and potentially enemy melters, right? Now you've just made all of that more expensive, and your opponent is very happily going to get out of the one Phoenix they have. So yeah, I like the Fortress, and it is going to do well in this case, but long-term AA anti-air barrage might be a bit of a problem, making the other techs more expensive. And if I'm Sparty, having seen this, the cat's out of the bag, I would simply go into Melting Point, because it's pretty good into spiders, and it's of course fantastic into anti-air barrage fortresses. Round number 3 though, we'll go over to Ubon, who kind of equalizes the score immediately. And now round number 4, we have some decent cards, things to think about. Rhino Assault could be purchased. Both players are somewhat vulnerable to it. Incendiary Bomb, always worth considering. And Intensive Training, I guess, if you want to greed, is fine, especially for Ubon. It does open the door to the giant spec Exodia, where you also get enhancement module. And that is what he goes for. But, you know, it does mean that you don't get access to one of the more aggressive spells here, which Sparty goes for with that fire. He levels up both of his Tarantulas and sells out of the Phoenix, of course. I mean, that's the only thing you should do here. You only bought a single Phoenix. Your opponent committed to Fortress Anti-Air. You know, you should just try and find some other form of DPS. Now, I don't think leveling the spiders here is necessary and or correct. Especially if you're not going to add more DPS, there's a decent chance that you still end up losing the fight and you feed a lot of experiences to the fortresses, right? It's not going to be easy for spiders to kill these fortresses, but that is kind of what you're asking them to do if you don't buy any alternative form of DPS. So I think this round I would have just left my spiders at level 1 and purchased melting points in front of the 2 fortresses. I don't know if there was money for that. I think maybe there would be on round 4, or at least for 1 melting point, and I think that would have just been better. The fire does land, but Sparty put it a little bit far back, I guess, maybe thinking that the opponent would shield up front, so it hits a good amount of units, but not an insane amount. He might do just fine here on the right side because the chaff clear from Ubon is not exactly amazing, and it does seem to struggle somewhat. On the right side though, or on the left side rather, we do have a level 2 fortress, so I think this should be a round win for Ubon, unless somehow this ends up going down, but I would be somewhat surprised about that with the lack of DPS from Sparty. And keep in mind, Ubon did take the greedy option here, did not go for the fire spell, went for intensive training instead, so him winning here is great for him. I would be very happy to play from this spot. Round number 5, we'll have to see if we get immediate unit reinforcements or not. But perhaps that is what Sparty was waiting for. You can get unit reinforcements here, and it can, I think, have a melting point in it, but that's not the case. We get an improved firepower control system instead. Easy item to pick up. And we have a skip from Sparty, who decides to go for a War Factory instead. Now, War Factory does have a good matchup into Fortress and Spider. I think I would rather go for Mountain, though. Back in the day when Mountain wasn't a thing, Factory was the undisputed kind of king of the ground-based fights. But with Mountain now being a thing, I think it's better. It just has more like front-facing DPS, because even though the overall DPS from a War Factory is great, two of its guns are often not engaged. So yeah, I think if you want to go for a Titan approach, I would likely go for the Mountain. Also, anti-air here may be a little bit of a concern, but Sparty does have 2 packs of Mustang, which might be able to do the job. In fact, it does seem like he will be just fine. Factory, an insane ball of stats, will very easily plow through the enemy board here, and Yuban has some chaff clear problems still. That can be a bit of an issue with spiders sometimes if you don't get levels, especially if you're in a mirror and your opponent does have the levels. It can be extremely difficult to get through all of the chaff, and that's what Sparty is doing really well here. I mean, Yuban as well, right? I mean, look at the amount of chaff on both boards, but 4 chaff here on the front and then 4 chaff behind on the right side for Sparty is very difficult to get through when the tarantulas are untech'd. This unit can become an insanely good chaff clearer, but it needs the HE at the bare minimum in this scenario. At some point, you probably will want range as well, just to keep them out of harm's way. But when they're this far up, with little to protect them, well, you can see what happens, right? And Yuban now down to 2k hit points. Round number 6, still no unit reinforcement, so that will come on round 7. And these spells are not the most amazing. You could go Photon Emission. I think that's a fine spell to take. There is some chance it does come back. Sparty will pick it, and the bonus stats you gain are very, very nice. And again, a pivot here from Yuban, deciding to get out of the fortresses and going for an Abyss instead. And he also picks up HE on the spiders, which I like, trying to fix the chaff problems that were definitely present. And then goes for an Abyss with the Swarm Missile tech. Now, Swarm Missiles is a pretty good tech on Abyss in general. However, it's quite expensive this early on, and to be honest, it's not that great into things like spiders and factories. It's really good into boards that are heavily based on something like Fangs and Mustang. You've got a lot of these smaller type of units, and you're maybe threatening to also grab a tower if the opponent is defending. But in these type of headbutt scenarios, I don't think it's worth clicking. You're much, much better off going for, honestly, just picking up the level, right? He intensive training this Abyss here, and the level would have costed 400, which is the same as the Swarm Missiles, but I can guarantee you that that level would perform better than the Swarm Missile tech will here. And again, right, I think Dark Companion is going to be a better tech in this headbutt scenario. You can even go for something like Vertical Sweep if you want, but I think those techs are higher on the priority list in this specific scenario than Swarm Missiles. The thing is, though, Sparty doesn't have any great anti-air. The left side Mustangs have already died. Same thing on that right side. It's what I talked about, where if you don't range your Mustang, they do have a tendency to kind of get mixed up with your front line and end up dying. So despite the factory killing everything on the ground, there's not enough left here to be able to kill this Abyss, unless somehow this Hero Fang pack can do something. But I don't believe that to be the case. I also notice now that I don't have any of the shadows on, because I played some 2v2s to try and, you know, keep at least some frame rate alive yesterday, so I'll get that back on shortly. But we have unit reinforcements here, and Wraith shows up, and this is what I was talking about, right? Imagine if you had Dark Companion still available, or at least you hadn't teched anything yet, and you could click Dark Companion now on the Wraith drop turn, because what you can do is pick up the high-level Wraith, tech it, sell it, and then the Wraith that you're going to be spawning from your Abysses are gonna have the techs that you picked on the Wraith. This is a thing that you can go for. Now, Sparty goes for his own Abyss as a response for into the Abysses from Yuban, which is kind of funny. Abyss does fine into Abyss. It's not like crazy. I think you'd probably be better off if you just go for the melting points, but this is entertaining. And I guess we're just going to get to see how this mirror plays out. There is a level advantage here for Yuban, but he seems to have some trouble still, perhaps with the chaff clearing, the late crawlers causing a bit of a problem. So even though Sparty is down on Abyss level, he does have, in my opinion, a better tech. Dark Companion clicked, and he manages to get an earlier lock on. Even though this Abyss fights back valiantly, it will be a round win immediately for Sparty, even though he, you know, went into this mirror a turn late. So yeah, we're gonna speed things up here as the Abyss cleans up the fortress, and immediate level up here for Sparty. So he's in a pretty good spot in general. Just better mirror techs in my opinion, and gets the level as well that he was missing. And okay, here we go. Shadows and everything are back on now. We have the fire that comes back for Sparty, so should probably just shield if you're Yuban. Make sure that your Mustangs don't die. It's a little bit awkward because the Mustangs are performing well, but it's your only pack. So the question is, do you really want to give them range, or do you repurpose that item? I'm not exactly sure. I think it is completely fine here to start selling out of the fortresses and go deeper into Abyss. And that's exactly what Sparty's doing. He's going to go for the vertical sweep tech as well. This used to be a bit of a meme tech in the past, but it's been buffed and buffed and buffed, and now increasing attack by 50%, it's a pretty good tech for how cheap it is. So I don't mind this at all. The alternative would have been to go for something like range, even though it is a bit more expensive. And yeah, we can see Yuban going for the Wraith tech as well. I haven't seen whether or not he teched his Wraith. And I mean, look at this. We also have this new Chinese New Year skin. This one is fantastic. I really do like it. I think I managed to get it myself just recently. And yeah, maybe I'll have to play some Abyss myself just to be able to see this in action. Both players now with 3 Abysses on the board, 6 in total here. And both spawning Wraith. And it looks like Yuban did not go for any techs on the Wraith. So again here, I think you should at bare minimum try to get range on the Wraith that you are spawning. It just helps a ton in terms of chaff clearing, and it's gonna be worth it, right? If you have 3 or even 4 Abysses and you're spawning the same amount of Wraith, that tends to do quite well. Because here, the right side again is struggling to chaff clear for Yuban, and it means that even though he does have a level 3 Abyss, it's not managing to get anything done. It just gets stuck on crawlers, and the enemy level 1 Abyss manages to get rid of it, right? 300,000 plus damage being dealt, and it's not even done. It's gonna get up to 400,000 probably, as this level 2 fortress is still there. Maybe not, as it does get distracted, so it looks like the level 2 friend will help out. And the fortress with the anti-air, still quite useful, does take out one of the Abysses, saves Yuban 500 hit points. Round number 9, we get more unit reinforcements. Now, I would say here you could try and go for Farseer and just mass Farseer if you're Yuban, but he's running a very weird tech bar that only runs AA, no range, and no burst. I think if you don't have burst on the bar, you probably should not try and use this to kill enemy Abysses. They just tend to not have enough DPS without it. So an alternative play could be to go for something like Sledgehammers. This is one of the counters to Abyss-based boards. Try and go for something like Sledgehammers with regen. You can even go regen and link if you happen to run it this late into the game as a bit of a gut shot, because even though Abyss seems to do a lot of damage, especially to big targets, the way that its gun works and ticks, it struggles against smaller units like Sledgehammers. And this means that oftentimes if you have higher level Sledgehammers than Abysses, and you go for something like regen or even, you know, regen link, the Abysses will simply get stuck on them for a very long time. And this is even more true if your opponent decided to go for vertical sweep. Because now instead of hitting, you know, the whole line of Sledgehammers, they tend to only hit 1 or 2. So that could have been an idea. Instead, Yuban here goes for mass Abyss, you know, sensible thing to do as well. In Mechabellum, it's just buy more of the same unit, especially if you've teched it and it's a Titan. But the one problem is this one Abyss here does not have anything to protect it. Now, Sparty did newly purchase this Abyss, and he has also teched his Wraith now with range. And, well, you can see what happens, right? That Abyss immediately dies. There is a Farseer on the flank, but This is something that I've said in the past. I think it's not worth going for these type of flanks on what is likely to be the final round. If you need to absolutely win because you're at sub 1,000 hit points, it's gonna be difficult to justify putting 600 resources on a flank if it still has to spawn in as well, right? You want to be as powerful as you possibly can be from the very beginning of the round. And that is not the case if you put a 600 cost Farseer on a flank, spawning in for 8 seconds, right? And you can see what happens, right? It's a complete disaster here. I'm not saying that, you know, putting the Farseer on the main board would have saved Yuban. I don't think it would have, but that's just a general kind of idea that you should adhere to, in my opinion, right? If you think that you might die, try and put everything on your main board. You can try to put a Phoenix on a flank because it's only 200 resources, and if it's a level 1 tower, yes, getting 9 seconds of debuff is gonna be more than worth it, but I don't think you should put one of your stronger units or one of your more valuable units spawning in on a flank on the final round. Great play by Sparty. Interesting lines as well. Some things I wanted to try out is round number 2, right? Yuban decided to go for Raiden. I have no idea if picking Fortified Overlord here would win, but it would have probably been my preference. If you want to go for a Giant, I would have just gone this and then sell that. We have the Fang here to defend the left side tower, so we should be completely fine. And then we can just unlock an Overlord and play that instead. Now, the one problem, I guess, is that you don't have any front line, which is something that I would have done different on round 1. I would have not bought this second Crawler, and I would have bought double Fang instead and put the Fang up here. Now, I guess maybe it's a bit weird playing it like this with no front line, but we can have a look at how this plays out. There is a good chance that we do end up losing because of it, because the Spider gets insta-locked naturally, but I think this has a better chance long-term than the Raiden would. Right now you can just keep investing into this Overlord and you'll be just fine. I think this likely does win if there is a Fang in front. But you can see you kind of do decently well on round number 2. You don't lose horribly. And yeah, if round 1 you decide to at least put a Fang in front, which you should do because you're likely to get into a headbutt, then round 2 this would be a pretty powerful play, and I think it would win because this Spider would not have died immediately, right? Now, other thing that I wanted to try is the final round, where we did get unit reinforcements, and I mentioned going for something like a Sledgehammer gut shot, and I do believe Yuban runs the correct text on his Sledgehammers. Yeah, he does. So if we pick those up, and let's say we put them over here, and then we go for Link and Regen. We, of course, want to loan, temp range, temp speed, all the good stuff. We're going to recruit more Sledgehammers in this scenario. I'm going to make a line here, and then maybe a line over here. We can buy a third one, so I guess I'll just do that. Do something like this. And then I'll probably just sell this Fortress, because realistically speaking, it's not going to be doing that much. Final round, let's put a whole bunch of missiles to get rid of this front line. This is something that you should try and do in the late game, especially if you see your opponent not purchase missile interceptors or shields. It's very valuable to get rid of, you know, this amount, 5 chaff units, because the opponents really, that's like half of their chaff. And it just manages sometimes to catch the enemy units off guard without protection. And then, you know, if you can one-shot some of these spiders, that cripples the enemy chaff clear massively. Let's go for second defense enhancement as well, and then we have 50 left to spare. I mean, we can like put this on a flank somewhere. I don't know, somewhere over here. Oh, there was actually a Crawler. Okay, well, that's a bit fortunate. Which does free up the Abyss somewhat nicely. But what you can see here is that these Sledgehammers are not dying. They are locked onto by 2 level 2 Abysses, but as I said, with the vertical sweep, they don't really hit that many Sledgehammers, and it would surprise you, right, how much this tech combination can withstand. It is very hard to kill if you don't have a super high level Abyss or something like a melting point on the field already, and yeah, you can see that it would have resulted in a very convincing win for Yuban. So yeah, you gotta run the techs to be able to do this, but it's very powerful if your opponent's committed to vertical sweep. Even if vertical sweep is not there, I think this wins, because even into regular Abyss, I have played regen sledges, even regen and link, and it does a fantastic job of buying you time. Anyway, if you like this video, please leave a thumbs up. Let me know down in the comments below what you thought about it. Have you ever seen 5 abysses on the board? I mean, now it's less because we bought the sledgehammers, but in the real game, there were 9 of them on the field. Do let me know. If you want to stay up to date with my latest content, please consider subscribing. And if you want to see me play live, check me out on Twitch. With that being said, take care, guys, and see you in the next video. Bye-bye.